Looking at what you have on your slide right now is a very beautiful diagram showing you the importance of incidence and prevalence. In most likelihood, you are bound to have this diagram in one or the other examinations of the many examinations that you give, be it MCI screening test, be it state entrance examinations, deemed university entrance examinations, or various PG examinations. So have a very careful look on this diagram. Again, these are sitting marks. Please do not lose them. We'll go through the slide one by one. As you can see, if I say for example, we are talking about the year 2012. You can see that the diagram shows the period from January 2012 to December 2012. So it is a complete 1 year thing. So incidence, if I ask you what was the incidence of disease in the year 2012, incidence means, as I told you in the last class, is only new cases. So as the diagram shows, let us count the number of new cases that were there in 2012, and the number of new cases will be, is case number 1 new? Case number 1 starts before Jan 2012, so it is not new. Okay, case number 1 is excluded, that is an old case. Case number 2 is also an old case. Look at case number 3. Case number 3 is new. Case number 3 happened in 2012. Okay, so 3 is the first answer. Case number 4. Case number 4 is also the right answer because it is new case. 5, right. 6, no. Why no? Because it is post December 2012. Okay, so I want an incidence of 2012. I want exactly the diseases which started in 2012. Therefore, case number 6 is also not incidence. It happened post December. I am asking the incidence of a year. Okay, so case number 6 is also excluded. Case number 7, again old. Case number 8, yes, I'll count it. So as you can see, the answer includes 3, 4, 5 and 8. So these are the cases which will be included as the incidence of the disease in the year 2012. Point prevalence on Jan 1. Obviously, this is easy to count. Point prevalence, when I say, you just count the lines which are crossing. Okay, so that would be case number 1 is present on Jan 1. Yes, it is. Case number 2 is present on Jan 1. Yes, it is. Other cases are not present on Jan 1. The last case number 7, is again present on Jan 1. So that would be the point prevalence 1, 2 and 7. So these 3 cases are the point prevalence. I'll spend some time on this. This is important. Get this. Very easy marks. Don't lose it. Just spend 5 minutes here. You will get a lot of MCQs. Point prevalence on December 31st. Again, the same logic. Just count the number of cases which are present on December 31st. Now you might be thinking, what happened to cases 2, cases 7? Why did the line stop? The line stops here maybe because the patient died. Okay, the patient died here, or maybe the patient got cured. So he stopped being the patient of the disease. These are the possible explanations for why the lines stopped. So 2 stopped here, 7 stopped here. Maybe somebody died, maybe somebody got cured, he immigrated, we lost follow-up. There are n number of reasons. Okay, so the line stops prematurely. The last thing on the slide is period prevalence between Jan to December. Something interesting. Okay, again, a second chance for people who get confused between incidence and point prevalence. Point prevalence of Jan to December, I'll count all the cases that were there during this duration. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is not there because 6 was not in 2012. It was in 2013, so 6 is already out. 7 and 8. So everything is included in the period prevalence except case 6 because case 6 was in the next year. Okay. If you have doubt, you can always come back and revisit this slide. Very important slide. Very easy marks. Okay. We'll move ahead. Okay. This is another diagram to show you the relationship between prevalence, incidence and duration. As I said, it is pelvic inflammatory disease, PID. And you can see in the diagram, I have a basin, I have a tap. The tap is pouring water into the basin and I have a outflow. So the new water that is coming onto the basin is incidence, new cases being added to the pool. This pool which has been accumulated there in the basin is the prevalence. Okay, and people die, lost to follow-up, got cured is the outflow. So I reduce the pool. Look at the diagram again. New cases, incidence. The pool that is existing is prevalence. People die, going out, that is loss. So prevalence is decreasing. Couple of important points here. MCQs can be framed on this. I ask, how can the prevalence of a disease be reduced? Straightforward answer will be close the tap, so the water will be less. Okay, so what are you telling me? Reduce incidence, prevalence will automatically go down. But there are some other methods of reducing prevalence also. What are those methods? Say for example, a disease certainly went berserk and people with the disease started getting killed automatically very fast. Okay, will the prevalence go down? Yes, the prevalence will go down. Okay, the drain will function here. In the diagram, the drain will function. People are getting killed by the disease. The prevalence will go down. When I say prevalence of a disease will go down, it sounds good. Okay, but there can be a bad aspect of reducing the prevalence of the disease. Okay, say for live examples, if I tell you, I say worldwide the prevalence of HIV/AIDS is increasing. Okay, the patient load of HIV/AIDS is increasing, but the incidence is becoming less. And there is a paradox. Okay, if new cases are being lessened, how is the existing case pool increasing? Like I just told you, I am clipping the outflow. In the first example, I increased the outflow. Now I am clipping the outflow. People on HIV/AIDS are getting better treatment. They are living for long time, and therefore the prevalence is increasing, although the incidence is decreasing. Very practical applications. This can be twisted and turned into n number of ways, and you can have again many questions on this. And please remember the last paradox that I told you. Incidence is decreasing and still prevalence is increasing, because that can be pretty confusing. Okay, so remember there is an outflow also. If you increase the outflow, prevalence goes down. If you decrease the outflow, prevalence automatically comes up. Remember this basin in case you are confused. Coming to the next slide, we will be dealing with measurement of mortality now. It is the starting point of many epidemiological studies. It is relatively easy to obtain and is reasonably accurate, because most of the doctors fairly are accurate in diagnosing the dead from the living, and it is a major source of data for the epidemiologist. Okay, so most often disease surveillance, health surveillance are not very good. So these data are easy to obtain. In fact, these are the easiest of the data to obtain, and therefore most of the time this is all that we have. Okay, so we do what we can with what we have. So usually this is what we have. Coming to a very important subtopic here, international death certificates. Somehow this keeps on coming in the examinations. Okay, somehow international death certificate keeps on popping up into the examinations. At the outset, I say international death certificate because there is a death certificate which is followed in India. For those who are interested in it, Indian death certificate is very much similar to the international one, but because India has a high maternal mortality rate, we have some specific questions into the questionnaire build, so that you have causes for maternal mortality also. So that is the only addition Indian death certificate has, and we'll see what the international death certificate is. It is the basis of mortality data, and it helps in knowing the frequency of disease in the population. It has two parts. Part 1 deals with immediate cause as well as underlying cause, which started the whole trend of events leading to the death. And part 2 is significantly associated disease that contributed to the death but not directly leads to it. I know this is pretty confusing. You understood nothing. Neither did I when I first learned this. Let us take this step by step, real life example, so you have everything sorted out. Cause of death, like I said, the international death certificate. If you look at the slide right now, you will see the first part that I was talking about. Disease or condition directly leading to the death. A beautiful example is again given in the books which will be used here. Say for example, death was a consequence of bronchopneumonia. The patient died because of bronchopneumonia. So that will come here. Okay. Antecedent causes, morbid conditions if any giving rise to the above cause starting the underlying condition last. Okay, so for example, the patient had a surgery, he had a strangulated hernia. The patient had a strangulated hernia, he developed complications and he developed bronchopneumonia, he died of bronchopneumonia. Bronchopneumonia will come here, right now my arrow is there. Strangulated hernia will come here. Okay, going to the second part of the death certificate, other significant conditions contributing to the chain of events. Say the patient has diabetes mellitus. So diabetes mellitus would come here. Now diabetes mellitus is definitely a contributing factor, but diabetes mellitus is not related to the disease. Okay, so diabetes mellitus is not related to the disease, but it was surely a contributing factor for the death of the patient. Again, I'll go back to the last slide. Immediate cause of death here, bronchopneumonia. Chain of events which started it was strangulated hernia, that will come here. On the second slide, diabetes will come here, a condition which helped in the mortality but was not directly responsible. So diabetes will come here. Okay. Bronchopneumonia, strangulated hernia, diabetes. A diabetic who developed strangulated hernia developed complications and died of bronchopneumonia. So small, bigger, biggest. Okay. So the direct effect, disease and contributing factors. That is how this death certificate is formulated. Please remember, terminal events like respiratory failure, myocardial infarction are not regarded in the death certificate in the first place. Okay, so these are the very common explanations given, but these are not put into the first part. Mortality rates and ratios. Crude death rate, as we had already seen this example in the rates, crude death rate is just the number of people dying divided by the median population multiplied by 100. Very crude, no specialization, nothing added, no age specification, no sex specification, just crude death rate. Advantages of crude death rate: it portrays an impression in a single figure, and disadvantages are lack of comparability for communities with different populations. Now what is this lack of comparability of population difference something? The something is, say for example, I'll take an example of an African country, say Somalia, and a developed country, say Netherlands. Okay, so if you see only crude death rates, let me write this on the board. Say for example, crude death rate for Somalia is 50 per 1,000 people, and the crude death rate for Netherlands is 65 per 1,000 people. Okay, so this is Somalia and this is Netherlands. Which is better? Obviously, Somalia is better. Okay, only 50 people are dying per 1,000 people, and Netherlands is bad because 65 people are dying. Was that the logical conclusion? I don't blame you. Yes, it is the logical conclusion. This is where the fallacy of crude death rate lies. Crude death rate hides a lot of things. Okay, now when you split these numbers, you will come to know that maybe in Netherlands, the people who are dying in the 65, majority come from the age of above 65. So these people supposed to die? Yes, nobody is immortal. They were supposed to die. Okay, in Somalia, if I split this, maybe amongst these 50, majority of the people are under 20. Were they supposed to die? No, they were not supposed to die. They are dying prematurely. So the health status of this country, Somalia, is in reality bad as compared to the Netherlands. But still, if I only show you the crude death rates, the conclusion is that Somalia is better. So crude death rate is a single number, but it hides a lot of data. Sometimes it can be exactly the other way around, as this example illustrates. Health status of Netherlands is better because old people are dying. They are supposed to die. Young are not supposed to die. Okay. So this is the disadvantage of crude death rate. Specific death rates. Now again, we specify something. Used to throw light on the etiology of mortality pattern, helps to identify a particular group at risk, and compares between various causes. Just one example here. Specific death rate of 15 to 20 year old. You can specify for anything. Okay. Here I have used for 15 to 20. You can say for males, for females, for infants, for adolescents, for adults, whatever specification. So the numerator would consist of that specification that you specify. The denominator would consist of, tell me a refined denominator. Say for example, I want a specific death rate for females. The denominator would consist of the median population of only all the females in the community, not the males. That is a refined denominator. Make a habit of refining the denominator. Sometimes this is the make or break in the MCQs. Okay, refine the denominator. If there is a specification in the numerator, you have to have that specification in the denominator. In our example, we will say deaths during a calendar year for females divided by median population of females in that year multiplied by 1000. So that is a refined denominator, and that is a accurate answer. Coming to the next rate, case fatality rate. Okay, dangerous rate. People die and we calculate how many of people die, case fatality rate. Total number of deaths due to a particular disease divided by total number of cases multiplied by 100. This is one of the most important indicators you can have for the killing power of the disease. How dangerous is the disease? Okay, I say tuberculosis is not dangerous. Okay, and I say rabies is very dangerous. Why do I say that? I put the numbers into this formula and let's see. Case fatality rate, total number of deaths due to a particular disease divided by the total number of cases multiplied by 100. This is one of the very important indicators to tell you how fatal the disease is. I say tuberculosis is a very mild disease as compared to rabies, which is a very dangerous disease. If you put the numbers into the formula, I say there are many patients of a disease, but the total number of cases is still larger. Tuberculosis is not that fatal. Okay, say for example you have total number of cases of tuberculosis are 1000. How many die of tuberculosis? Ages ago a lot of people died. Right now very less. We'll do the same thing for rabies. How many people had rabies? 1000. How many died? Everybody. Okay, everybody died of rabies. So you can see that case fatality rate of tuberculosis is very small as compared to rabies, and hence I conclude that rabies is a very dangerous disease as compared to tuberculosis. Okay, so killing power of rabies is very high as compared to tuberculosis. Again, either you can be asked to calculate the case fatality rates, or you can be asked to tell what disease has more killing power, and in that case you will have to do the calculation of case fatality rate. Okay, exclusively used in acute infectious diseases like cholera, measles, etc. varies for the same disease in different epidemics. Okay, so killing power of the disease may vary. You know, very classically influenza, you have a pandemic. Sometimes the pandemic is very severe, sometimes the pandemic is very mild. Proportional mortality rate. Proportional mortality rate is the number of deaths from the specific disease in a year divided by total deaths from all causes in that year into 100. Don't get confused. I am just changing the denominator. The denominator says total number of deaths. Out of the total number of deaths in a community, how many died because of a specific disease? That is proportional mortality rate. To put it really simply, total number of deaths in the denominator, deaths because of a particular disease in the numerator. I'll give you an example to explain you proportional mortality rate. Say you have an epidemic of cholera in a village whose population is 1000. Okay, so I say in the year 2012, 50 people died in that village. So that 50 becomes the denominator. Out of that 50, cholera was so severe that 40 people died out of that 50 from cholera. So 40 becomes the numerator. 40 died because of the cholera divided by 50, that is the total number of deaths. Remember, this is not mid-year population. The denominator has been changed. Denominator is the total number of deaths. Numerator, deaths because of cholera, and that gives me proportional mortality rate. Okay, so proportional mortality rate, how much of the mortality is proportional to a disease? It is suited for a broad disease group. Next we have adjusted or standardized rates. They are used to compare the death rates of population with different age composition, and they are done by two methods, by indirect and direct methods of standardization. Now I just rubbed off the example of Somalia and Netherlands, but that was the classical example again to be used here. You saw that apparently Somalia was better in their health status, and we saw that that was not true. In Somalia, people who were not supposed to die were dying. So we had a unique problem there. You had numbers which were lying to us. To correct that problem, you have this solution, standardization. You, for your entrance examinations, for your PG examinations, do not need to go into the details of standardization. Neither will you be expected to do standardization calculations. What you need to know is what this is and what this is used for. Okay, so you will not have a problem in the examination to standardize the whole thing. That will never be there. Okay, so you just have to know what direct and indirect standardization is and when it is used. In direct standardization, the output is a rate. Direct standardization is done when the population is selected arbitrarily can also be created by combining two populations defined as one for which the numbers in each age group are known. Say for example, I'll apply the death rates of Somalia to a standard population. Now what is a standard population? Standard population can be anything. You say a standard population is where infants are 100, adolescents are 200, adults are 150, geriatric population is 200. This is a standard population. Okay, you say what is the logic? No logic. The logic only is that you need to know the exact number of people in that population. That is all logic there is. Do you ask me, can this be used everywhere? No, this cannot be used everywhere. This is a problem specific standardization. Okay, so a standard population simply means you know each and every individual head in that group. So I know how many adolescents are there, I know how many adults are there. Now I try to apply the mortality rates of the existing population to this standard population and I calculate the expected rates. How do I do that? Don't even bother about it. Okay, and then I total the number of deaths which are expected. This is standardization. Okay, so this is direct standardization. Next is indirect standardization. In indirect standardization, first we saw direct was a rate. Okay, going back to that slide, you see output is a rate. For direct, the output was a rate. In indirect standardization, the output is a ratio. Okay, so you have the mortality which is actual and the mortality which is expected. So say for example, the expected mortality is 100 and the observed mortality in the group that you calculated by indirect standardization is 130. So the conclusion drawn is that the mortality in the observed population is 30% more than that observed in the expected population. So that means the risk of mortality is greater. Again, how we do indirect standardization, don't go into the details, would never be asked, you would never be asked to calculate also. Only you need to know is this is a ratio. You divide two numbers, the lower number is the expected mortality, the higher number is the observed mortality. If it is above, this number is bigger, there is increased 30% chance of mortality as compared to the expected. Okay, so if this number is less, say for example, what happens if this is 90? What happens if this is 90? That means it is actually protective. Okay, so if you are in a coal mining industry and you work as a coal miner, if you have got these figures for your industry, that means you have got a 30% more mortality rate in your industry. If you have got this, it is actually protective. That means your chances of dying are less than the general population. So that is good. Okay, so this is how indirect standardization is interpreted. You get two numbers. Number is above 100. Okay, there is a risk. Number is below 100. It is protective. Okay. So a ratio above 100 increased mortality that general population, and a ratio less than 100 is protective, that is mortality is less. More often than not, if there is a question in the examination or there is an example, you will have this ratio above 100 and it should be increased mortality. Sometimes just to trick you, if you see that the ratio is less than 100, that is just to trick you. Okay, that is protective. So that is direct and indirect standardization.